So, so what we're discussing, ionic equilibrium, is basically the equilibrium that is established when you dissolve an ionic compound in water. So when you dissolve ionic compound in water, it dissociates into its ions, and it's not like once it dissociates, it's going to stay put as ions. There's going to be an equilibrium established. So some part of it remains as whole molecule, some part of it is dissociated, and that keeps constantly shifting here and there. Okay. So this is ionic equilibrium. Now, when we speak of strong electrolytes and weak electrolytes, all that happens is they differ in when this equilibrium is established. So when we talk about strong electrolytes, they are almost close to 100% dissociated. So the equilibrium is established um, when majority of the species in the solution are ionic, are these ions. But for weak electrolytes, you don't have as many ions. Like there is a considerable portion of whole molecules as well. Like equilibrium is established almost immediately. Like there's a considerable portion of molecules also, and there is there is a portion of ions also, but it is much less than what you get in strong electrolytes. So that is where this property called degree of dissociation comes from. So degree of dissociation, represented by alpha, is a quantity that comes into focus only for weak electrolytes. The reason is that for strong electrolytes, because almost 100% of the compound is dissociated, degree of dissociation is approximately equal to 1. You can almost equate it to 1 itself. But for weak electrolytes, it is not equal to 100%. It is a definite fraction. So definition also is literally the fraction, like the number of number of molecules or moles of the electrolyte that is ionized out of the total number of molecules that you have initially dissolved. Okay. Now, because almost all of them dissolve, for strong electrolytes, alpha degree of dissociation is equal to 1. But for weak electrolytes, degree of dissociation is not equal to 1. And now, you know the importance of acids and bases. Like we've come across this back when we were studying about acids, bases, and salts in your lower classes, right? Like as there needs to be certain acidic medium for some processes, like natural process to happen, or there needs to be like an alkaline medium for some natural process to happen. So it definitely matters how much of an acid or a base is dissociating. It needs to be the right number for any particular process to take place, which is why it is necessary for us. Like, that is the reason we have all of these quantities like degree of dissociation and strength of an acid, how strong an acid is, how weak an acid is, and all of those things. So, in lower classes, how would you differentiate between a strong acid and a weak acid? Like, it's not like you can practically count how much a particular acid is dissociating or not, right? So practically, like experimentally, if you were to figure out the strength of an acid, what would you do?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah. So if you were to practically figure out what is the strength of an acid or a base, what would you do? How would you figure it out?
pH scale.
Very nice. So Maya is saying pH scale. And how would you figure out a pH scale? Like, I just gave you two test tubes or beakers. I said, okay, one of them has a strong acid, one of them has a weak acid. Now, how would you know which is a strong acid, which is a weak acid?
We can put the pH paper inside that test tube and decide on the rest of the color.
Right. So you're gonna use pH paper for that, right? So far you've learned that, okay, you can use pH paper or the universal indicator. That is going to give you an idea of how strong or weak an acid is or a base is. But is that accurate? Like if you were to, let's say, make photosynthesis happen in it, or replicate the process of digestion or something, or maybe organic reactions, you've learned a lot of reaction, some need acidic medium, some need basic medium. So if you were to do that, will pH paper help you figure out how much of an acid or a base to take?
It won't help us figure out how much is required. What it will do is just help us know whether it's a strong or a weak acid.
Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, so pH paper, because it's all about colors, it gives you an idea of, it gives you a qualitative idea of how strong or weak the electrolyte is. Now, what we're going to do with quantities like degree of dissociation, uh, Ka or pKa or Kb or pKb, is going to give you quantitatively, it's going to give you correct numbers, so that using those numbers you can figure out exactly what quantity of acid or a base to take for the required strength. Okay, so just to put you in context, why are we studying about ionic equilibria for acids, bases, salts, is so that you get a quantitative idea of how acidic or basic you need a thing to be. Okay, so now let's get into the meat of it. So before we start off, let's see, how do you define acids and bases? So as per your school definition, like whatever you have known so far, what do you what do you understand by acids and what do you understand by bases? Like if you were to identify if a compound is acid or a base, what do you do? So I just give you like HCl, H3PO4, H2SO4. Like how do you figure out if these are acids or bases? What kind of compounds are these?
Ma'am, but again, if we use like litmus paper or pH paper, that will give us a qualitative idea whether it's an acid or a base.
Right. No, now we're not talking about strengths and all. We're
Yeah.
going back to defining them,
Okay.
identifying and defining them.
Okay.
Okay. So, like just looking at it on paper or here on the screen, what do you think these are? HCl, H3PO4, HNO3, all of these.
Acids.
How did you figure out they were acids?
Because if you are to dissociate that compound, it
Mm-hmm.
would break into a proton and another compound. For example, HCl will break down into H plus and Cl minus. So like a proton donor.
Correct? Yeah. So, in the beginning, like, so this is what Arrhenius concept mentioned. Arrhenius was a scientist, he was a chemist. He classified, like, he was the first one to identify acids and bases, and this is exactly how he figured out. He said, according to Arrhenius concept, he said acids are substances that give out H plus in water in aqueous conditions, and bases are compounds that give OH minus in water in aqueous conditions. Okay. And if in case in aqueous conditions, you see that it releases both H plus and OH minus, then he called it amphoteric. Amphoteric is the word used to describe something that has properties of both acids and bases. Now, because it's giving out H plus also, OH minus also, he said if you have both these ions, they are called Amphoteric compounds. So what's the most common example of an amphoteric compound you guys can think of, like off the top of your head? Something that gives out both H plus and OH minus? Quickly, like the first thing that comes in your brain when you look at
Water.
water. Yes. So water gives H plus also, water gives OH minus also, right? So he called it amphoteric. So he had this neat little way of classifying acids, bases, and like classifying and identifying these compounds. Okay. But obviously, because we have other theories also in existence, Arrhenius didn't stand for a lot of time. So, what are the different limitations that he faced? So, you guys have heard of ammonia, right? NH3.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think NH3 ka property should be? Acidic or basic or amphoteric?
If you look at it once, you feel like it'll be a acid because of the presence of H
H,
plus.
right?
Yeah.
But in reality,
It's a base.
it's a base. So cases like these. So NH3 is not the only one. So you have AlCl3, aluminium chloride, BF3. So there are certain compounds that Arrhenius definition was not able to explain. So that was like one major limitation, that he could not explain the properties of um, of species that don't have H plus or OH minus. Where are their acidic basic properties coming from? See, so that was one limitation. Other limitation is that you can't define anything based on H plus OH minus because you can't like practically prove it. Like H plus ions don't exist independently. It only exists in aqueous conditions. You can't like take a beaker full of H plus ions, right? It needs to have something of equal and opposite charge ka species also in it. So you can't, yeah, so like that, it's not like a completely watertight definition of it. And another issue is, um, because Arrhenius said it gives out H plus in aqueous solution, OH minus in aqueous solution, it is limited only to aqueous solutions. Okay, like if you had a substance that is dissolved in ammonia, so you guys had come across this, like alkali metals, ammonical solutions of alkali metals, or maybe a substance dissolved in alcohol, right? Even alcoholic, or you can do experiments like ether or pyridine can be used as solutions. So it was not like a universal definition. It was only like one part of it that Arrhenius was able to explain. So which is why you needed a better definition, which is all encompassing to categorize acids and bases. So the next iteration,
Ma'am,
yeah,
could you elaborate on the second H plus don't exist independently?
okay. So like H plus, okay, I just wrote H plus, but H plus and OH minus ions, uh, you can't have, you can't like take a beaker full of H plus ions. Like H plus ions don't exist independently. Like for example, even if you put HCl in water, it's not like that solution is going to contain only H plus ions. It is going to contain a small amount of OH minus ions and Cl minus ions also. So you can't say
Yeah.
that something that gives out H plus ions alone is acidic. Like you need to build more explanation for it. Yeah, like If
Okay.
it has OH minus ion also, then what's the relation between H plus and OH minus? Won't that make it amphoteric that way?
Yes, ma'am. Got it.
Yeah. So now because Arrhenius concept didn't stand, next iteration came in the form of Bronsted-Lowry theory. So this is like a team of scientists, two people who developed it, Bronsted and Lowry. They were like, okay, so if Arrhenius couldn't explain acids and bases, we're going to give it a shot. We're going to give a better definition. So they kind of looked at cases like ammonia, and this is what they came up with. So this time they said, if a species gives out H plus, so proton donors, then it's an acid. And if a species accepts protons, proton acceptors, is a base. Okay. Now, how does this explain all the acids and bases? Acids is pretty straightforward. Like if you look at HCl, H2SO4, acetic acid, all of these furnish protons, and so they are proton donors, and that's why they can be called as acids. Now, proton acceptors are called bases. So if you look at the equilibrium that's established, if you want an equilibrium out of NaOH, you mix it in water, then this equilibrium will get established, right? So NaOH dissociates into Na plus and OH minus. So you have Na plus ions, and the OH minus ions that are there will accept a proton from water. So if they accept a proton from water, so water may you have this ionic equilibrium established, and you have OH minus ions in the solution. So in bases that have OH minus ions, the OH minus part of it behaves as a proton acceptor. Now, if we extend this definition to species like ammonia, you mix ammonia and water. The lone pair of electrons on nitrogen is going to be the one that's going to accept proton. So you have NH4 plus OH minus. So ammonia is the lone pair of electrons is directly accepting a proton from water, and it is being established, like this particular equilibrium is being established. Okay. So Bronsted and Lowry theory, they introduced new terms called conjugate acids and bases. Okay. So now where does this concept come from? So if we come back to acid ka equilibrium, let's take HCl. This is the equilibrium that's established. It is donating a proton, and this is like basically the equilibrium that's established. Or another way, now because H plus doesn't exist independently, we can write it this way: HCl plus H2O gives H3O plus, the hydronium ion, plus Cl minus. Okay. Now, when I write this in this format, it means that the forward reaction also will take place and the backward reaction also will take place. So if you look at the forward reaction, which one is the proton donor?
HCl.
HCl. Very good. HCl, this is the proton that's being donated. If we look at, so that is why you can call HCl an acid and H2O is the base in this particular equation. Now, if you look at the reverse reaction, what is happening in the reverse reaction?
H3, the hydronium ion will donate a proton and Cl minus will accept it, making it the base and hydronium ion the acid.
Very good. Correct. So what's happening in the reverse reaction is H3O plus is losing a proton. H3O plus is turning into H2O because there is a minus H plus happening here. And this minus H plus is combining with Cl minus to form HCl, right? So if you look at the reverse reaction, H3O plus is the one that's donating a proton, which makes it an acid in this case. And Cl minus is accepting a proton from H3O plus, right? Cl minus is accepting H plus, that's why it's turning into HCl, which makes Cl minus a base in this context, in this situation, right? So the acid on LHS, like the species that donated a proton, like H plus was attached to Cl minus, has become a base in the reverse situation. Cl minus is the one that's accepting the proton. That is the reason in this particular equation, because HCl is the acid, Cl minus is called the conjugate base. And similarly, H2O is acting as the base in the forward reaction. So this is the one acting like an acid. So H3O plus is called the conjugate acid of H2O. Okay. So this is what Brownstedt, Lowry, these scientists had come up with. They've called conjugate. They're saying for every acid and a base, there exists its conjugate acids and bases. Like every base has a conjugate acid, and every acid has a conjugate base. Because acid donate proton, then the species that lost the proton will want to accept the proton again. So that's the reason acids have conjugate bases. Now let's look at the same thing in this reaction. Now NaOH is the base because it's accepting the proton, and H2O is the acid because this is the H2O is the one that's donating the proton, right? Now, what is the conjugate acid of NaOH?
Hydroxide ion.
So conjugate acid, again, hydroxide is not donating its proton, right?
Hydroxide ion is a conjugate base.
Hydroxide ion will be a conjugate base because that's the one accepting the proton.
H plus would be the, I mean, if you take H2 as a whole, then H2O will be the conjugate acid, or like H plus would be the conjugate acid.
So in this situation, like ideally NaOH is the base, then Na plus would become the conjugate acid because the presence of Na plus is basically the Na plus is attracting the OH minus, freeing up the H plus. So it's indirectly releasing the H plus ion, which is why in this situation this becomes the conjugate acid.
And aren't conjugate acids formed when acid donates a proton to base?
Yeah, like if you have an acid, yeah, so if I write the same reaction, if I do NaOH plus HCl, then yeah, it becomes like there is a neutralization reaction and all. But
So
yeah,
like in this example, I can understand why H3O is a conjugate acid, because it has an extra hydrogen which it can donate, and that is why it is conjugate acid.
correct. Yeah.
But in this case, Na plus, I'm having problem understanding why it is a conjugate acid.
Hmm. So when NaOH is dissolved in water, NaOH is the base. It furnishes the OH minus ions. Now, the in the reverse reaction, Na plus is attracting OH minus ions, and it is indirectly releasing the H plus ions from water. So NaOH itself or Na plus itself does not have any hydrogens for it to donate, right? So it needs to get hydrogen from somewhere. So it is pulling the OH minus from water and releasing the H plus from water. Like it's the presence of Na plus that's releasing the H plus from water indirectly
Okay.
that way. So it is more straightforward in this example. So ammonia is accepting the proton. So this is the base. It is accepting proton from water. And so this is the acid. On the other side, which one would you classify as the conjugate acid and which one as the conjugate base?
NH4 is conjugate acid, OH minus is conjugate base.
Very good. So NH4, like going back, NH4 is turning into NH3, which means that NH4 plus is the proton donor. So this is the conjugate acid. And again, OH minus is the conjugate base. This is accepting the proton to turn into water that way. Okay. So this is what Bronsted-Lowry theory had explained. So this is how they explained acids and bases. Now this worked very well. Uh, again, but it had its own limitations. So let's say if Arrhenius concept covered about 50% of the solutions there are, Bronsted-Lowry theory explained up to like almost 80% of the solutions there are. But there's still that last 20% solutions remaining, right? That both of these concepts could not explain. Now, again, because this also depended on H plus ions, H plus donors and acceptors, they could not explain the acidity or basicity wherever H plus was absent. So that I'm sorry, yeah. So that involved like limitations. So Bronsted-Lowry theory failed in all the cases which are not aqueous. So if you had a
So, ma'am,
yeah,
can we say that Bronsted-Lowry theory is also limited to aqueous solutions only?
correct, exactly. So they could not explain uh, again non-aqueous or non-protonic more like because it was based on protons, right? So even if it was not aqueous, if it was alcoholic or any other proton-based solvent, they could not explain non-protonic solutions. Yeah, so wherever there was no H plus exchange, they could not explain it. And by extension, because of that, again, they could not explain the acidity of AlCl3, aluminium chloride, BF3, these kind of species. Okay. So that's where Bronsted-Lowry theory had failed. So that is the reason where again, Lewis, the same guy who had given out your octet rule and everything, he had come up with his own theory for acids, bases, and salts. So all the acids and bases that we define based on Lewis's theory that he put forward, they are called acids, Lewis acids or Lewis bases. So Lewis acids, Lewis bases again are it's very similar to what Bronsted-Lowry had put forth. So Bronsted-Lowry had defined based on H plus donors and H plus acceptors, right? Now protons are attracted to, protons themselves are positively charged, they are attracted to negative charge. So what Lewis saw was the flip side of it. Like, okay, let's not be specific about what species are being exchanged. Like, let's not be specific about H plus or OH minus or anything like that. What exchange is common amongst all the ionic equilibria? Let's get right down to electrons. Okay. So Lewis acid spaces, yeah. Yeah, you're saying something?
Electrons. Yeah, I said
Yeah.
electrons.
Okay. So Lewis acids and bases were defined based on electron pair donor and electron pair acceptor. So electron, like something that donates an electron pair, he defined it as a base. So basically all nucleophiles, you can say, exhibit basic properties. And electron pair acceptors, he said, were acids. So basically all electrophiles exhibit acidic property. So this is something you can just like, in case it is confusing to figure out electron pair donator, electron pair acceptor, you can just think of nucleophiles as bases and electrophiles as acids. An easy way to remember is examples of nucleophiles like OH minus, Cl minus, like these all come under bases. Electrophiles, protons positively charged, starved of electrons, they come under acids. Okay, just trick to remember it, that's all. Okay, so every single compound that you see undergoing this kind of equilibrium, anic equilibrium, you can classify it as acids and bases. So basically, according to Lewis, this is the reaction that takes place. So you have electron pair acceptor, acid, and bases, because they are an electron pair donor, they need to have an extra electron pair that they can donate. They basically form a complex with B donating electrons to A. So basically, even when you have species like, let's say, AlCl3, that is how he was able to explain the acidity of AlCl3, BF3, and all that. So AlCl3 is called a Lewis acid because Lewis definition can explain its acidic property. So this is something familiar to you guys. Tell me what reaction you come across this in. So AlCl3 plus Cl minus. Now because Cl minus negative charge got extra electrons, it forms a complex
ALC
AlCl.
whole double minus.
So where have you guys come across this reaction?
Uh, alkylation, acylation.
Very nice. Yes. Friedel-Crafts reaction. Basically, electrophilic
Yeah.
substitution. Yeah. Good. Okay. So here AlCl3 acts as an as what do you call it? Electron acceptor, electron pair acceptor, which is why it is classified as a Lewis acid. Okay. And Cl minus is a Lewis base. And Bronsted-Lowry theory also confirms the basic properties of Cl minus, because Cl minus also is basically a conjugate base. Okay. So it's all fitting together. It can explain all the previous properties also, and it can encompass something that was left out also previously. Okay. Based on this, another interesting fact that comes out is that so all Bronsted-Lowry bases act as Lewis bases, but all Bronsted-Lowry acids do not act as Lewis acids. How do you explain this? How do you figure this? All Bronsted-Lowry bases act as Lewis bases, but the Bronsted-Lowry acids do not act as Lewis acids. How do you make sense of this?
Ma'am, could it be that when it comes to Bronsted Lowry, each base, like, I don't know, each base has an electron pair to be donated. For example, the examples that we saw before, H2, H2, H2O, all three of them, like, oxygen has two lone pairs. So maybe that.
Close, yeah. So for a Bronsted-Lowry base, the
Ma'am, I
base
have a doubt.
has, yeah, Mayas?
When you say Bronsted-Lowry acid, you mean conjugate acid, or you just mean the acid that we have in the reaction?
The acid, like acid defined as per Bronsted-Lowry theory,
Sorry, like
H plus
H2O.
donor. Like
In this.
H2O, like HCl, like H2SO4, something that can donate H plus.
Hmm.
Yeah. So all Bronsted-Lowry bases need to be H plus acceptors. Now, when can anything accept an H plus? H plus is positively charged when it has an extra pair of electrons. Right? So that
So
way,
by its definition, it makes sense.
yeah, by definition, it makes sense. That's how, like, because that's why all Bronsted-Lowry bases do act as Lewis bases, because they can uh, attract an H plus ion if they have an extra electron pair, if they become electron pair donors. If they have deficiency of electron, if they don't have any electron pair to donate, how will they attract an H plus, right? That's how by default it becomes that. But Lewis acids, all Bronsted-Lowry acids do not act as Lewis acids, because again, like it is based on H plus, like you give out an H plus, it is not equivalent to accepting an electron pair. Like best example is if you take HCl, like any of these, it's not going to accept an extra electron pair, right? Like this is the one that's dissociating into H plus and Cl minus. Yeah, that's why all Bronsted-Lowry bases act as Lewis bases, but the acids, they don't act as Lewis acids. All of them are not electron acceptors that way. Yeah. So by extension, Lewis acids, like it's not exactly, it doesn't explain protonic acids. And another major disadvantage of Lewis acids, although it explains behavior of certain compounds as being acidic or basic, it can't give the order of the strength. because all the previous cases, because they were dependent on a specific species, Arrhenius said H plus. Bronsted-Lowry also said H plus, right? So you can kind of measure the strength based on how many moles of H plus ions are being dissociated from a particular acid. But for Lewis definition, it is based on electron pair, right? So you can't really say how strongly will this pair of electrons attract or how many electron pairs are available, because that's gonna get into steric hindrances and stability and all of those things. So you can't quantitatively, like, you can't say the order of strength because it depends on the type of reaction that's happening over here.
So, ma'am, if we're doing Lewis and acids, and if we are to measure the order of strength, we can simply use the qualitative data by using like the pH scale or like litmus paper, right?
Yeah, qualitatively you can figure out. So you can figure out if the nature is acidic, basic, and if it's like a vast difference, then you can figure it out, yeah, using pH paper. But you can't like give the order of the strength. Yeah, you can't quantitatively measure it. Yeah. So these are like the basic definitions of acids and bases by different what do you call it? Different definitions. So coming to strength of acids and bases, so because Lewis definition is not going to help us out with that, so let's look at Arrhenius versus Bronsted-Lowry theory. Okay.
Can you tell how do we like if the same question is asked in the exam, all will be Bronsted Lorry bases, active bases, and
Mayas, I lost your voice there. Can you be a little louder? Also increasing
yes,
volume.
ma'am. I was asking if the same question comes in exam, how do we write
What question?
all all Bronsted Lorry bases act as fluid bases, all Bronsted Lorry acids do not act as fluid acid.
I don't think you'll get it. It's more of a footnote or an observation that you can see that it happens basically.
Because if it came, it can be very
Yeah, like again in this chapter, uh, this particular question is not going to appear. But anyway, after the class, like I'll what do you call, compose it properly and I'll give you the text for it. Okay. Just remind me if you don't get it in like an hour after class. Compose it. Now coming to Arrhenius, yeah, strength of acids and bases. So qualitatively, if we had to look at the strength of acids and bases, let's consider Arrhenius definition. Because Arrhenius says acids need to give out H plus, you can literally say if it's a complete dissociation, basically into H plus or OH minus, then you can say it's a strong acid or a strong base that way. Okay. And for Bronsted-Lowry theory, so if you had to consider what is a strong acid based on his definition, again, according to Bronsted, proton donors, right? So if it is a higher tendency to give out H plus, it's a strong acid. And so yeah, so yeah, like basically it all depends on this particular equilibrium. So if the equilibrium tends to shift more towards the right in case of Arrhenius or Bronsted-Lowry, it's a strong acid or a base. And if it is shifting more towards the left, then it's a weak acid or a base. It also means that the conjugate base or acid is a strong acid or a base. Okay. So basically, if you had to consider, let's say, dissociation of HCl. So HCl, if you put it in water, this is the equilibrium that's established. H3O plus plus Cl minus. Now HCl, because like we know that from prior this thing, HCl is a strong acid. So the equilibrium will be mostly shifting towards the right. You will have a higher proportion of hydronium and chloride ions as compared to whole HCl molecules or water molecules. Alternatively, from a reaction, if you come across this particular equation, H3O plus, and you have chloride from like some other reaction left over, HCl plus H2O, right? In this case, the equilibrium will be mostly towards the left. You will find a higher proportion of the ions rather than whole molecules this way, which is why you can say that Cl minus as a base is a very weak base. You won't find a higher proportion of whole molecules, you will find a lower proportion of it. So HCl is a strong acid, and if the reverse equation, like if the equilibrium is shifting towards the left, you can say that it's a weak acid and a weak base. Similarly, you can compare water and H3O plus also. So water is a stronger base than H3O plus, or H3O plus you can say is more acidic than H2O that way. So even in the case of Bronsted-Lowry theory, you can figure out which is a strong acid, which is a strong base, based on which direction the equilibrium is shifting in. Yeah. So this is exactly what indicators do. Like you must have come across acid-base indicators, right? Like phenolphthalein, methylene blue, all of these. So what they do is they are very weak acids, are slightly acidic. So when you mix them in the aqueous solution where you have acid or a base, this is the equilibrium that's established. So
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I sort of lost my internet for like a minute there.
Yeah, so we're discussing strength of acid bases, right? So even if you were to measure if something is acidic or basic using an indicator, this is exactly what happens in the solution. So HLN is basically, this is how indicators can be represented. They're slightly like mildly acidic, and this is the conjugate base, right? So they have different colors, like basically HLN is a different color, and if you have Ln minus, it's a different color. Now if you put this indicator in an acidic solution, what do you find in acidic solutions? So how, like, what do you find in acidic solutions?
H plus ions.
Yeah, greater concentration of H plus, or because H plus doesn't exist, you find higher concentration of H3O plus ions, right? Now, what do you think will happen to the equilibrium? Is the reaction going to shift towards the left or towards the right?
Towards the left. So backward reaction will be favored because of high concentration of H3O
Correct.
plus ions.
Yeah. Calling back to Le Chatelier's principle, right? H3O plus is favored, higher concentration. So the backward reaction is favored, which means that are you going to find more of color 1 or color 2?
You'll get color 1 more.
Absolutely. So that is how, because so that's how, if you find that it is color 1, again color 1 I'm just using as a placeholder, it may be colorless or pink or blue or green, whatever indicator you're using, right? So if you find that it is color 1, that's how these indicators work. You can say it's an acidic solution. The reason is that when you put this in acidic solution, this equilibrium gets affected. Similarly, if you put it in a basic solution, something that has a lot more OH minus ions, those OH minus are going to affect the concentration of H3O plus. They're going to like combine with H3O plus, turn into water. So then the forward reaction is favored because this concentration goes down and the solution ends up being color 2. So that's how your indicators work. They shift between colors because the concentration of H plus or Ln minus is changed depending on whether it's acidic or basic. Okay. Got it? So this is how your indicators work. So because if you're judging it based on the color, you can qualitatively check the strength of acids or bases. Now coming to quantitative strength of acids and bases, we're going to get into something called ionization constant of water and the ionic product. Okay. All right. Now,
Ma'am, could you go back to your previous whiteboard for just a second?
yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Now talking about the ionization constant of water and the ionic product. What equilibrium is established in water, within water? Like there's no other acid or base. We're looking at just water.
Water dissociating into H plus and OH minus ions.
Absolutely. Now, because H plus cannot exist, like a single proton can't be going here and there, you end up having H3O plus ions, hydronium ions plus OH minus ions. So this is the equilibrium established in pure water. So in this case, water itself, now water is furnishing H plus ions. So this acts as an acid, and water is accepting the proton to form H3O plus. So this acts as a base. And because one molecule of water is accepting, whichever has accepted becomes the conjugate acid. And this one, in the reverse reaction, it accepts the proton. So this becomes the conjugate base. Okay. So what is the expression for equilibrium constant for this equilibrium? K will be equal to
Molar concentration of products by reactants. So H3O plus OH minus upon 2H2O maybe.
H2O into H2O, H2O square. Stoichiometric coefficient becomes exponential. But I won't write concentration of H2O in the denominator. Am I wrong or am I correct?
You're correct because they don't. They're it's equal to 1. Their molar concentration is equal to 1 because it's a pure substance.
Correct. So concentration of H2O, because it's a pure liquid, molar concentration is equal to 1. So we don't write it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change either way. So this particular expression is called ionic product of water. It's represented by Kw. Okay. Because it is literally a product of the ions of water, basically. So this particular expression is called the ionic product of water. Okay. So now, because we are considering pure water, we don't have anything extra. Concentration of H3O plus will be equal to the concentration of OH minus. So at 298 Kelvin, it has been found that now this is always going to be equal. Concentration of H3O plus is equal to OH minus, because if it was not equal, think of it. If you have extra H3O plus, where has that come from? When all of water is basically a neutral compound, for every H3O plus formed, you need to have an OH minus. So that is why the concentration is always equal to each other. And at room temperature, at 298 Kelvin, it has been found that this value is equal to 1.0 into 10 raised to the power minus 17 molar. So basically, this much fraction of water molecules are always in equilibrium with each other. Okay. So based on this, if I substitute the value at 298 Kelvin, Kw will be equal to 10 raised to the power minus 7 into 10 raised to the minus 7, 17. So 7. That is equal to 10 raised to the power minus 14 m square. Okay.
So, ma'am, these are experimentally calculated values.
Yes. So it has been found out at this particular temperature. This is the value of ionic product of water. Of course, as temperature changes, the Kw also will change. So you'll have different values. So it's important to note the temperature at room temperature. This is what it is. Okay. Now, is this starting to feel a little familiar? The numbers that we are coming across? 7, 14, all of this? So,
And this is the pH scale.
yeah. So in case, back in 10th grade, if you had a question, why is pH scale only up to 14 and who decided that 7 should be equal? Why can't we keep it 0 to 10, like 10 fingers, decimal basis? This is the reason. These are experimentally calculated values, and that is why we have pH scale going up to 14 and neutral when concentration of H2O plus is equal to concentration of OH minus. Neutrality means 7. This is the whole reason why we have it. So of course, if the temperature changes, the extent of your pH scale is also going to change. Close to 298 Kelvin, like okay, aspas here, that's fine, close to 25 plus or minus. But if you are going up to 100 degrees Celsius or like 90 degrees Celsius or something like that, then yeah, this is going to change considerably. But yeah, this is the origin of it all, guys. This is the origin of your pH scale, which is what we are going to discuss now. So pH scale in terms of colors, you can qualitatively figure out how strong or weak a particular acid or base is. But if you have exact numbers, right, Even if you have a difference of pH 1.4 versus pH 2, in terms of colors, these are going to look similar, but because you have this difference in values, you can say that one is more acidic than the other. Okay. So pH scale was first introduced by this person called Sorensen. Just have his name, trivia, fun fact. Sorensen introduced pH scale. He's the one who worked it all out. So pH ka definition, pH, the P stands for like basically potential of, H stands for hydrogen ion. So technically, or exact, like the definition is that it is basically the negative log to the base 10. So it's not natural logarithm, it's log to the base 10 of the activity of H plus ion. So activity of H plus ion represented by AH plus. A simply means activity. Okay. So if solution is very dilute, so very dilute matlab like extremely dilute, if the solution ka concentration is like less than 0.01 m, hundredth of a molar, then you can say that activity of H plus is equal to the concentration. It's like almost approximately equal to whatever is the concentration. Okay. So if it is like if you take a 3 molar solution or a 2 molar solution, that's like extremely concentrated. But if you were to measure the pH of solutions that have like where the activity of hydrogen ions is like dilute, kind of dilute, then AH plus can be taken as M. So pH is literally, what you need to take out of this is pH is literally negative log to the base 10 of activity of hydrogen ion. So whatever situation solutions that we would come across while solving our problems and everything, it's basically negative log to the base 10 of the concentration of H plus ion. So pH is equal to minus log AH plus, or in other words, you can also say pH is equal to minus log concentration of H plus ions. Okay. So roughly, this is something you guys are familiar with. So if pH is less than 7, it means that solution is acidic. And if pH is equal to 7, it is neutral. And if pH is greater than 7, it is a basic solution. So this is the qualitative way where you can measure the strength of acids and bases. So reason why you need this qualitative analysis is because, quantitative analysis is because if you have situations where, let's say, you have like 100 ml solutions and you have like 1 molar acetic acid and something like 0.01 molar of HCl. HCl is clearly a stronger acid. This is going to completely dissociate into H plus ions. CH3COH is a weak acid, but because you have a lot of CH3COH in comparison to HCl, these two might end up having the same pH, which means that both these solutions are equally acidic. Now, can you figure that out just by seeing the labels that, oh yeah, this is a stronger solution of, more concentrated solution of acetic acid, and this is like a dilute solution of HCl? So just by looking at the labels, can you figure out which one would be more acidic, which one would be less acidic, or what if they have the same pH? So these kind of conditions are a little ambiguous, right? So that's the reason if you have like a proper quantitative way of measuring things, you'll be able to judge properly, correctly the strength of acid, different acid and base solutions. Yeah. Okay, so just like pH, you have something called pOH. So can you tell me what is the expression for what is pOH?
Negative log of the concentration of OH ions.
Absolutely. So basically, if you find a small p written here, this needs to be a small p, not a capital P. This small p basically means you need to take negative log to the base 10 of whatever you have here. So if it is pH, concentration of H plus, pOH, concentration of OH minus. Similarly, that's how you have the values of pKa and pKb and all of those things. Okay. Now, how do you think pH and pOH are related? How are pH and pOH related? Who can derive it? Like, I want to give you guys a chance to take over. You need to relate pH and pOH, right? Start with the relation between concentration of H plus and concentration of OH minus. So what expression do you know of that relates concentration of H plus and concentration of OH minus? Yeah. Who can say this?
Ma'am, could you repeat
What is
your question?
Yeah, what's the relation? What expression do you know of that relates concentration of H plus and concentration of OH minus?
The dissociation of H2O.
Very good. The ionic product of water. Okay. So Kw is equal to concentration of H plus or H3O plus into concentration of OH minus. At 298 K, we know that the value of Kw is equal to how much?
1.0 into, oh wait, KW.
10 to the power minus 14.
Correct. 10 power minus 14. It's 10 power minus 7 into minus 7. So exponents you add up, you get 10 power minus 14. Now you want the relation between pH and pOH, right? How do you get pH and pOH from this? What do I need to do, LHS and RHS?
Multiplied by log to the base 10.
Once minor correction there, Mitali. You're not multiplying by log, you're taking logarithm.
Oh, sorry.
It like just like multiplication, logarithm itself is a function. Okay, but yeah, so take negative logarithm on both sides. So minus log H plus into OH minus is equal to minus log of 10 raised to the power minus 14. Okay, what should I write in the next step? How do I simplify this?
You take it individually. I don't know. I mean, guessing.
Yeah, but how do you do that? You guys have studied logarithms, right? Did you have it in math?
Ma'am, I'm not a math person. Like, I haven't opted for math, but in the school
Oh,
also we did. So,
okay. But
I don't
basics
know.
like physics ke liye, have you done basic math? Like,
No, even then, there they didn't teach us logs because they said we wouldn't need them.
oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, math people, can you tell me what to do? Ansh, Rithi, Mayas, Ishita, Tarannum, you guys?
Miss, I like math, but I don't know how to do log.
अरे logarithms math syllabus में होगा ना? Did you guys learn laws of logarithms like laws of exponents जैसे rules?
No,
No?
no, our teacher
Ma'am,
just explained us how to use the table.
अच्छा,
Minus log 10 is the value of the raised to power, which will be 14.
like ये
Minus
सारे नहीं थे क्या? Logarithm of a into b is equal to
yes, ma'am, we've done that.
log. So, if you've done this, then
we only did an introduction, like we didn't solve any questions.
हाँ, basic rules ही, right?
But but in this, I think we multiply the exponent. We take
Yeah,
the exponent.
exactly.
From
So LHS ये दोनों concentration का multiplication है ना? So if we have to split them up, you get minus into log of H plus log of OH minus. It's exactly like logarithms are the inverse of exponents. तो इसलिए whatever rules of exponents you have, a power m into n is a power m, sorry, a power m into a power n is a power m plus n, right? Similarly, logarithm of something into something is log first thing plus log second thing. Similar rules. अभी यहाँ पे exponent जो आ रहा है, that becomes, this becomes minus of 14 into log 10 to the base 10. Okay. Now this I can write it as, again, simple math, minus log of h plus minus log of OH minus is equal to, ये minus 14 होगा ना, यहाँ पे minus 14 है. So minus of minus, this becomes plus 14. Log 10 to the base 10 will be equal to
1.
1. Correct. So it's basically 10 power 1 is 10, right? That's why log 10 to the base 10 will be equal to 1. So 14 into 1 is 14. So basically, minus log of concentration of H plus is nothing but pH. Minus log of concentration of OH minus is nothing but POH is equal to 14. Okay. So this is the relation between pH and POH. This is the derivation, simple derivation. All you need to know is इधर से इधर आने के लिए rules of logarithm, but otherwise pretty straightforward. You start with ionic product of water. At 298 K, this is the value. So after that, it's just mathematics. Apply logarithm, simplify, you'll just get it on. So now this relation, it's important to keep in mind, just in case you get a twisted question where you're given the pH value and you're asked to calculate kb of a base, like a solution with a basic solution with pH 12 has so and so concentration, calculate the kb or something. So you need to be able to calculate the concentration of OH minus ions from there. So having this relation, like you know what is the pH, you can get what is POH, and once you have POH, you'll be able to calculate what is the concentration of OH minus ions. Yeah. So things like that. If you get like a slightly twisted question, better to note down relation between pH and POH. Okay. Okay. Can we go to the next part?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Now, practically, how do you measure the pH value of anything? Now, pH paper is one way, but again, qualitatively, like quantitatively, it doesn't give you what is the strength or concentration of the acid, right? This, you guys must have done it in acid-base titrations. Have you guys? I mean, yeah, you haven't like been to school, but in case they've shown you labs like virtually or something, have you guys come across acid-base titrations?
They haven't showed us virtually, but I know what is the gist of what is titration.
Okay, cool. So basically, if you have to check the concentration of like strong acids or bases, if you have an unknown, yeah, Natalie?
Because it depends on the amount of acid which is used in order to neutralize the base which is in the beaker below it, right?
Correct, absolutely. So you have acid of unknown concentration. Then you take a base whose concentration you know. Then you neutralize it. And then figure out how much base you have used to neutralize the acid. The way you figure out is you check, you know the total amount of base that you take. So from that, figure out how much is unused. Like you would know how much is unused. So based on, so total minus unused will give you how much base was used in the neutralization. And once you know the stoichiometric calculation, you can figure out, okay, how much acid was required. So based on that, you can figure out the concentration. And if the base was unknown, then the opposite. You take acid of a known concentration, known quantity, you check how much is unused. So total minus unused will give you how much is used. And then you can do your stoichiometric calculations and you can figure out this thing. Now, how do you know when neutralization would happen? This is where your indicator comes into picture. So normally in laboratory at school age, we've used phenolphthalein, like depending on acid or which titration you're doing, either it goes from colorless to pink or suddenly you will find appearance of pink color that way. Okay. So use an indicator. From there you get the concentration and then you can do this. Okay. Another way to do it is you can, like if it is completely neutralized, then you see that on neutralization there is a salt being formed. You can figure out what is the concentration of the salt, and using hydrolysis equation you can figure out um, how much acid and base were used that way. Okay. One major note that you guys need to have when you're doing these calculations is basically if you have um, if you have acid of extremely low concentrations, I'm talking about something like 10 raised to the power minus 8 molar, for example. If you use your pH formula, you have pH equal to minus log of 10 raised to the power minus 8. How much do you get here? Calculate. if you have acid of extremely low concentration, like, so I'm taking HCl, but I'm taking 10 power minus 8 molar HCl. If I were to calculate the pH, how much will I get the pH value as per my formula, minus log of H plus ion concentration? Come on, guys, how much am I getting here?
10 raised to negative 16.
pH minus log of 10 power minus 8 कितना है?
pH is 8.
8. So does that mean that HCl is basic? Greater than 7 आ रहा है. HCl is basic?
And shouldn't there be some sort of error? Because it's
Exactly.
not basic.
Yeah, so this method is basically wrong, right? So whenever you have extremely low concentration, along with, so this much is furnished by HCl. HCl का ionization से you got these many ions of H plus. Apart from this, you also have concentration of H plus ions from water, right? It's an aqueous solution, 10 power minus 7. So the total concentration of H plus that you have is basically 10 power 89, 10 power minus 8 plus 10 power minus 7. So if you do this calculation, you get something like, take 10 common, 10 power minus 8 common, I get 1 plus 10, that is equal to 11 into 10 power minus 8. So I need to take negative logarithm of this value and not just 10 power minus 8. So if you take negative logarithm of this value, can you calculate and check how much you're getting pH as? Check for 11 into 10 power minus 8. Calculate and let me know how much you're getting.
Ma'am, I got the first part of it where the method does not apply because there is some error. I didn't get the second part.
Yeah. So basically what you do in that case is, whenever you have extremely low concentration, like if you were to look and judge whether something is extremely low or not, if it is lesser than your naturally found hydrogen ion concentration, yeah, if it is like slightly less than 10 power minus 7, that's why it's 10 power minus 8, right? So in that case, you also have to take the naturally found H plus ion from water into account. So in that case, pH ka formula, you can't just take 10 power minus 8. You have to add H plus from water plus H plus from acid. You have to add both of these quantities. So you have to add 10 power minus 8 plus 10 power minus 7. Okay. So when you add both of these values, I get 11 into 10 power minus 8. So this is the H plus ion concentration that I have to use in the pH ka formula.
Okay, ma'am, got it.
Okay. So if I take negative logarithm of this value, can you guys, like, can someone of you do it in the calculator and tell me what you get? क्या हुआ? No one checked it? Diti, Taranu?
Ma'am, what we need to check the
Yeah.
Oh, the value
Yeah,
of
minus log of
log
11 into 10 power minus 8.
11.
Yeah, you need to check log, not ln. It needs to be to the base 10, not the natural logarithm. What happened? कैलकुलेटर में चेक कर लो ना, जल्दी हो जाएगा.
How do we see log in calculator?
Oh, phone पे होगा ना, like you just.
I know, but uh,
See,
wait,
why I'm asking you guys to do it is if I just tell you the value, it's not, I mean, it's always
because
better when you do things yourself. इसलिए.
so I write log of 11.
Log of when you press bracket आ जाएगा. अगर नहीं आ रहा है
Minus
तो फिर
log.
हाँ, you can do this also.
Minus 88.
Minus 88. Do log of 10 power 8. Log of 10 power 8, this is basically equal to 8, right? Do 8 minus log 11. ये कर सकते हो. क्योंकि यहाँ minus भी है ना, so minus of minus becomes plus, so this is positive 8, and minus of log 11 will remain as it is.
It is showing minus 11. So minus 11 into 8.
Into क्यों आएगा? 11 into 8 नहीं है ये. 11 into 10 power minus 8 है.
Ma'am, negative 6.9586 and
3
numbers.
decimal is sufficient. Yeah. So negative
So
मतलब,
negative 6.959.
right. Negative of this negative will become positive. So this will approximately be equal to 6.95, right? So 6.95 is still less than 7, but it's very, very close to 7, right? So this fits in with our fact that HCl is acidic, which is why iska pH is less than 7. But concentration of HCl is so low, like imagine you just put like 1 drop of HCl in like a whole beaker of water. So concentration is so low that it is almost close to 7 itself. Still on the acidic side, but almost equal to 7, right? So this is the case. Like normally you just do P like minus log of hydrogen ion concentration. But when you have extremely low concentration, so if you have concentration approximately equal to 10 power minus 7 or less than 10 power minus 7, both these cases, you need to add the natural hydrogen ion concentration. You need to add 10 power minus 7. Okay.
How do they expect us to do such calculations in an exam?
You would have log tables, right? Like you're
so
allowed
No.
far
to use
I
when
mean, not an exam.
yeah, not in the exam. So
Oh, you're not. No, you should be allowed log tables in exam. You're not.
they said that you wouldn't need it because they'll be giving us the values, but then when
Oh,
it comes to calculation, they've said nothing.
oh. Yeah, just clarify that. Like if you're not allowed, then you won't get problems like these. And if you do get it, yeah, they said they're going to give you what is log 11 and all directly. So it should help you with that. But the main concept in these cases is you should know that you're going to add, like you're going to do this part of it. That is what is the real test rather than getting the actual number. Okay, that way.
Ma'am, can you do a question on this case? Because I'm not sure what kind of questions they'll ask.
It is like you'll get direct question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you'll just be asked like calculate the pH of a solution of HCl or 10 power minus 8 molar solution of HCl, something like that. I remember looking at like a similar question in question bank itself, or like one of the questions. It'll be given pretty directly, that kind of thing. Calculate the pH of this much concentration. Maybe you'll be given lower concentration like 10 power minus 11 molar or something like that. But yeah, it'll be pretty direct. Okay. So yeah, we now coming to like we have checked what is the ionization constant for water. Kw is equal to ionic product of water, basically H3O plus into OH minus multiplication, and at 298 Kelvin standard temperature it is equal to 10 power minus 14. So now let's look at ionization constant of weak acid. The reason why we specifically look at weak acids is because they don't ionize completely. So it's not as simple as product of concentration of H3O plus into concentration of the conjugate base that way. Okay. So for weak acids, alpha gets in the picture, which is basically your degree of dissociation. Alpha is significant. It plays a role in your pH expressions and all of that. Okay. So for a weak acid, the equilibrium is you mix it in water plus HX aqueous is basically it is in equilibrium. It dissociates into H3O plus ions aqueous plus X minus aqueous conjugate base H plus X minus. Okay. At T equal to 0, let's say we took C concentration of H plus. C is the concentration of the acid that we have taken. We don't have any of the products yet. By the time you reach equilibrium, what will be the concentration of uh, the acid molecules in the solution?
Ma'am, can you repeat that?
Yeah. So initially we started off with C concentration, like C is the value of the concentration. When you reach equilibrium, how much of HX molecules would you find in the solution?
Ma'am, HX is my acid, right?
Yeah. So alpha is the degree of dissociation, right? Matlab,
Yeah.
alpha is the fraction of the total that has dissociated here, right? Which means that how much of ions would you find? you would find
Take X number of ions, then.
C into
Oh, but ma'am, it depends. No, is it a strong or a weak acid?
yeah, it's a
Because,
weak acid with alpha degree of dissociation.
but then even in a weak acid, there is no complete dissociation, right? So how can you just like
That's why you
make
have
it C
alpha
into alpha?
defined. There is no
Okay.
complete dissociation. We don't know if it like 25% has dissociated or 50% has dissociated. Like that depends on what acid we are taking. So that
Okay.
25%, 50% we are defining as alpha. How much has it dissociated? The degree of dissociation. So if
Okay, ma'am.
alpha, yeah. So if 25% has dissociated, it will be 0.25 into the total concentration. If 50% dissociated, it will be half of the total concentration. That way. So C alpha has dissociated, matlab, based on the stoichiometric equation, we have C alpha of X2O plus and C alpha of X minus. So if out of C, C alpha has dissociated, how much will be left?
C minus C alpha.
Correct. So total C, initially we started off with C. Out of that, C alpha has dissociated. So we take off whatever has dissociated, remaining will be left during equilibrium. So this I will write it as C into 1 minus alpha. Yeah. So the ionization constant for this equilibrium, now because we are defining it for a weak acid, you call it Ka. So Ka will be equal to what? Concentration of products upon concentration of reactants. H2O is a pure liquid, so we only consider the concentration of Hx. So plug in the values at equilibrium, we see that concentration of product is C alpha into C alpha upon concentration of reactant C into 1 minus alpha. So cancel out the common factors. I get Ka is equal to C alpha by 1 minus alpha. So this is the expression for ionization constant of a weak acid. Okay. So now because the value of Ka is dependent on alpha, so this is basically the measure of a strength of an acid. It measures strength of the acid. Okay. So if the number of moles that is dissociated is almost equal to the total. So if alpha is approximately equal to 1, then Ka will basically be equal to C. So basically the concentration, like how much of the acid has dissociated, is basically equal to the concentration of the acid that you initially took. So for strong acids, alpha is so much equal to 1. For weak acids, alpha plays a role, which is why this is the formula you need to use. Now, for an extremely weak acid, basically the fraction that has dissociated is alpha is like so much less than 1. Think of alpha as 0.000001, something like that. Okay. Then I can equate, like then value of 1 minus alpha will be approximately equal to 1. 1 minus of 0.000000001 is basically equal to 1 itself, right? So in that case, so you get Ka is equal to C into alpha square. Oh, C alpha square, sorry, there's two alphas, one didn't get cancelled, so it needs to be square. So K is approximately equal to C into alpha square. So rearranging it, we get alpha is equal to root over Ka upon C. Okay. Now, because the degree of dissociation is directly related to the Ka value, that's why you can say that Ka is also like a measure of the strength of an acid. Yeah. So another important aspect you can observe from here is alpha is inversely proportional to the root of concentration. So basically, as you decrease the concentration, like decrease the concentration means as you increase the dilution. So if you increase the dilution for weak acids, the degree of dissociation increases. Okay. So expanding this to extremes. So infinite, if you dilute it to infinity, so infinite dilution. So infinite dilution of a weak acid basically leads to alpha being approximately equal to 1. It reaches 1 basically. Okay. So basically the degree of dissociation increases with dilution and reaches 1 at infinite dilution. This is specifically applicable only for a weak electrolyte, and this particular law is called Ostwald's law of infinite dilution. This you're going to study about in detail when you're actually studying about electrolytes and conductivity of solutions and all that. But yeah, now because of this relation of degree of dissociation with the volume of the solution, it is inversely proportional to concentration. Now concentration is basically equal to number of moles upon volume, right? So directly related to volume. So as you keep increasing the volume of the solution by diluting it, so basically if you increase the dilution, the degree of dissociation also increases. And if you dilute it, like on reaching infinite dilution, alpha value also reaches 1.
Can I just quickly ask you to define dilution?
Dilution is basically decreasing concentration. You can do that by increasing the volume of solvent, adding more solvent. Like if you think of acetic acid in water, you already took an established quantity of water, added some acetic acid in it. Adding more water is going to dilute the concentration, right? So that's what is dilution. You're going to increase the volume of the solution by adding more solvent. That's dilution. So that decreases the concentration, which in turn increases the degree of dissociation.
Got it, ma'am.
Okay. So are you guys clear about the derivation for ionization constant of weak acids? How did we get this formula? So even if you don't remember this formula, right, it's pretty easy. So if you just remember this derivation, it's just stoichiometry. Once the equilibrium is established, figure out the concentration. So equilibrium concentration basically depends on your degree of dissociation. So it's a fraction of molecules that actually dissociate into the ions. So if alpha fraction dissociate, then alpha into C, like 25% of the concentration or 60% of the concentration. So depending on the value, it's C into alpha. So if C alpha has broken down, remaining that is intact is C into 1 minus alpha, C minus C alpha. Okay. After that, it's just the expression for equilibrium. Certain like canceling common factors, do the math and you'll get the formula. This is a special case when it's an extremely weak acid. You can approximate, like weak acid matlab, the dissociation is very, very less. Like the tendency to break into this ions is less. Tendency to break, like very few molecules break into H plus and X minus. So the value of alpha is also going to be very, very less, which is why we are saying 1 minus alpha is approximately equal to 1. 1 minus a very small value, almost negligible, which is why almost equal to 0. So 1 minus alpha is approximately equal to 1. So Ka changes into this value. So if you know Ka, if you want to find out the degree of dissociation, you can rearrange it to get this formula. But if you know the degree of dissociation, if you know the Ka, you can find out what is the original